and of course, Dr. Fergus. Good afternoon, good evening to one and all.
Hi, good evening, Brother Ruskin. Good evening, and good evening to our listeners. Good evening to our global listeners in particular. Welcome to another edition of Indaba. Yes, my brother. Kwame, over to you.
Thank you so very, very much for that introduction. Of course, at this point in time, it is my pleasure and privilege to speak to tonight's rundown, so to speak, in terms of what's coming, what we would call down the proverbial pipeline. We'll be starting off tonight's program with another scintillating, dynamic, and informative edition of the Africa Report. Aviation imperialism, British Airlines versus Air Peace of Nigeria. That's going to be our Africa report tonight, courtesy, of course, Baba Dr. Claudius Fergus, the intellect, the scholar of the people, the people's scholar, the people's historian, as I'd like to call our beloved Baba here. Following that, we'll be going into tonight's viewpoint, an update on the third session of the Permanent Forum on People of Africa Descent, with guests in studio on tonight, no less a person than His Excellency Ambassador David Comissiong, no stranger to our Indaba audience, definitely no stranger to Pan-Africanism and all issues relevant to our uplift and development as a people. Our last topic for tonight that we'll be delving into has to do with the issue of the feature. Our feature for tonight is the installation of the Transitional Presidential Council in Haiti for some. Of course, His Excellency will be staying on for that segment, and by the grace of the divine, we may have another guest joining us as well, an activist extraordinaire who has been maintaining contact with the people on the ground. So, as these policies and practices are being rolled out, we want to hear from the standpoint of the activists. What is your response? How are you coping with all of these transitions and changes taking place in real time? But with that said, we want to say a very pleasant good night to our Facebook audience and to our YouTube audience. We want to welcome you in a special way, those from the continent, Akwaba, Bevakasha, Dayo, Pula, Nala, Lesidi, all of the great greetings on the continent. Of course, to those in the diaspora, we bid you a very special good night as well, and welcome once again to yet another edition of Indaba, the voice of the Emancipation Support Committee, the voice of the people, certainly the place to find consensus. Without further ado, we go straight into tonight's Africa Report, courtesy Claudius Dr. Fergus.
And as you listen to the report, I want you to think, particularly our people in the Caribbean and most particularly in Trinidad and Tobago, why is it that we cannot have a direct flight to the continent, particularly using our Caribbean airlines? Because some of the same airlines mentioned here in terms of aviation imperialists are also involved in, that is, they would be affected by any direct flight out of the Caribbean using a Caribbean carrier. Because normally you would have to go either to the United States, to the Netherlands via KLM, or to England. And therefore, the passenger traffic would be affected via those airlines transiting through those points. So as you listen to the report this evening, I want you to be thinking about the relevance of that to our own development of our direct air route to the continent. So, Rene, bring up the report for me, please. Thank you very much.
Now defined a turning point for Nigeria's aviation. It was a day the local traveling populace heaved a sigh of relief as Nigeria's indigenous airline operator, Air Peace, started its direct flights from Lagos to London.
Nigerians proudly celebrated the inaugural flight of their new flag carrier, Air Peace, from Lagos to Gatwick International Airport in the UK on the 31st of March 2024. They entered the UK in style with a brand new wide-bodied Boeing 777 aircraft. but most were not prepared for the dogfight that would follow on the heels of this significant breakthrough. This is the Africa Report with an insight into aviation imperialism. In this edition, we discuss the vicious imperialistic reaction by British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, and the British government to the entry of Air Peace into the direct London to Nigeria route that the two industry giants had monopolized since the collapse of Nigeria Airways in 2003. The airline industry is a cutthroat business. Once the big sharks establish hegemony over a particular route, they are likely to gobble up or scare away any intruder or upstart within their feeding ground. To more effectively squeeze out airlines from former colonies in particular, the big players often form cartels through joint ventures. For example, in 2019, Virgin Atlantic entered a joint venture partnership with KLM, Delta Airlines, and Air France. Collectively, they successfully lock out many African airlines from entering European and American airspaces. These industry giants are instruments of economic imperialism in a real sense of the word. After gaining dominance over any route between their home bases and former colonized states, they engage in price fixing that bear no relationship to market forces. The Nigeria-London route is huge, whether for business, education, or leisure. Several attempts by privately owned Nigerian airlines have been beaten back by stringent conditionalities imposed by UK aviation authorities. The two UK airlines have been engaged in price gouging, making Nigerians pay by their noses for 2 decades. When the Naira recently depreciated to 1,500 to $1, their first-class ticket sold for 17 million Naira. Business class at 15 million and economy at 5 million. Converted to US dollars, these would cost $12,000, $10,000, and $3,500 respectively. Nigerians could pay much less if they traveled with Ethiopian Airlines, with a long stopover in Addis Ababa, or Qatar Airlines transiting through Doha, or even head south to Johannesburg to get a direct flight to London, more than tripling the distance but paying less than a direct flight out of Nigeria. Last month, the game suddenly changed when Air Peace took on the giant sharks and inaugurated its Lagos to Gatwick route. Air Peace is owned and managed by Igbo business tycoon Alan Onyema.
We could have done 10 million business class, and Nigerians would clap. They say, oh, Air Peace is cheaper. Would have cashed in on it.
That was the CEO of Air Peace, Alan Onyema. But why are these airlines so afraid of Air Peace? This is Onyema's explanation.
I know why they are all scared of Air Peace. You know why? Air Peace is in the UK bona fide. We passed the TCO audit. So we are not just there doing wet lease. We are not going into the UK on the back of wet lease operations only. No, we are there bona fide as of right. They came, audited us. We passed their TCO audit, which is very, very stringent. It's all about safety. We passed it. So we got that TCO approval, which most airlines from Nigeria in the past never got. So they depended on wet lease. And when you depend on wet lease, I'm telling you, you're going to wet lease an airline from an airline over there. Whenever they wake up and want to deal with you, they use that lessor and take you out. All these airlines all over the world, they don't own their planes. Give it to Nigerian Airlines. We own our planes. I own all the over 34 airplanes Air Peace has bought. 100%. 100%.
Onyema is well known for his philanthropy, having twice used his planes to return stricken Nigerians from South Africa and Sudan free of charge, a demonstration that he is no shark, although certainly not a heron in the business. Air Peace completely flipped the market like a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. The airline sold its first-class tickets for 4.5 million Naira, business class for 4 million, and economy for 1.3 million. These prices are equivalent to $3,000, $2,700, and $875 US. The impact on the travel market between Nigeria and London changed dramatically for all airlines. This is the new situation as reported by Arise TV.
The return ticket from Lagos to London For Air Peace, direct flight is at 1.3 million naira. Qatar Airways is at 1.2 million naira, while British Airways is at 1.8 million naira, and Virgin Atlantic is at 973,000 naira.
At times, Nigerian patriotism manifests like a supernova. This was one of those occasions. Seats on Air Peace have been sold out up to September of this year. To guard against Air Peace deploying other aircraft to soak up all the demand in the market, the big sharks dramatically cut prices, dropping even lower in some instances than Air Peace. Such low prices are unsustainable without the British government's subsidy or other financial intervention. But the objective is obviously to drive Air Peace out of the market and then return the route to catalyze pricing. Plan B, which the British-based sharks implemented simultaneously, was to sabotage the operations of Air Peace at Gatwick with the intention of causing delays in departure, which would ultimately force the airport authority to cancel their landing rights. Alan Onyema calls it a devilish conspiracy. But let's hear more from Air Peace's boss directly in an interview with Sheun Okinbaloye on Channels TV.
The same strategy is being employed right now by some of those foreign airlines to drop the price so that people will now leave Air Peace and go to those foreign airlines. Are you aware of those tactics?
Of course. It's a very devilish conspiracy. All of a sudden, airlines are underpricing. That is below the cost.
Yes, and it's of 1 month.
Yes, not up to a month. One other airline was advertising $100. Another one $305, $350. If you fill up the entire aircraft and carry people on the wings, it's not even enough to buy your fuel. So why are they doing that? Their governments are supporting them. Because Nigeria has been a cash cow for everybody. The idea is to take Air Peace out, and the moment they succeed in taking Air Peace out, Nigerians will pay 20 times over. Once again, it's going to happen if, God forbid, they're able to take Air Peace out. Because what is happening now is scary.
This is the UK's Plan B.
And of course, even in Gatwick where you are you given 100% cooperation? Let me tell you this. On the first day, on the inaugural flight out of London, 24 hours to the time, they moved us to another check-in area other than the place assigned to us. The place they gave us, the carousel was not working. So when you check in people, you need to manually carry the load to go to 50 meters away to go and drop it somewhere else, just to delay you. When we got to Gatwick, we now said, okay, let us take Gatwick. They said, oh, no slot available. When we pushed and pushed, they gave us scattered slots. Today, 3 p.m., next day, 2 a.m., the next day. Who does that?
Fortunately for Air Peace, the Nigerian government stepped in and warned the UK Airlines and Gatwick Authority to back off, or else Nigeria could be very unwelcoming for them. In this regard, Aviation Minister Festus Keyamo stood tall for his country's honor.
So Festus Keyamo had to wade in, went to London with us, and to warn them, if you continue these stupid, foolish acts, the government of Nigeria will surely retaliate. And this is from the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The British Airways is not owned by the British government. The Virgin Airline is not owned by the British government. No. But the government in that country will back it and will support it and make sure that nothing happens to these airlines.
Because it's a British investment.
But yeah.
They create jobs for their people.
So this is a Nigerian investment.
This is a Nigerian investment.
And
let's conclude this edition of the Africa Report with Alan Onyema's Ubuntu vision for Nigeria's aviation industry.
It's not just Air Peace alone. Anything we do now is for the entire Nigerian aviation industry to succeed. If they take out Air Peace prematurely, this country will pay dearly for it. 10 times over, quote me, billions will be lost. There will be another heavy strain on the Naira. Remember, it's only yours that can save. I invite other Nigerian airlines to join the fray. Let them come. Let all of us do international operations.
what a fantastic program indeed. Again, we have been informed in terms of all that's going on, all that's happening on that front. And we can see what we would call very, very age old cartel tactics being utilized to keep the Nigerian company out of what is an extremely lucrative market. It is very, very telling that the current prices that they were, well, at least what they were attempting to sell the tickets at, was below cost. That is certainly unsustainable, but it is certainly something that they were willing to do to keep Airpeace out of that, again, very extremely lucrative market. I'm happy to see our co-host Shabaka Kambon joining us. Welcome back home, as it were. Very powerful report there. I'm going to turn it over to you to field any questions or comments to Baba coming out of that very powerful piece of journalism there, laying very bare and exposing all of the insidious and unethical practices to keep us out of their markets while we continue within the African continent to give them free and fair opportunities to participate in our economy. Over to you, my brother, and again, good night and welcome.
Yes, well, it's a pleasure to be back with you all here on Indaba, and I see we have Ambassador David Comissiong with us. Welcome, Ambassador. Dr. Fergus, good to see you. Of course, I just came back from Venezuela. The Venezuelans had a very, very interesting, a unique experiment in participatory democracy that we're going to have to talk about at some point going forward, that I had an opportunity to observe. You know, no country in the world has a perfect democracy, but certainly I think every people tries to, as best as they can, to improve their democracy, to, I suppose, get as close to democracy as possible. And the Venezuelans have certainly, started a process there that, if successful, could really be a blueprint for the rest of us. Of course, the topic tonight, when we get into that question of Haiti, I'm just going to put it out there that I did attend some meetings of the World Social Forum. That is the World Social Alternative, sponsored by the Bolivarian Alliance of the Peoples of the Americas. And I did meet some of the Haitian activists there, and they did indicate to me that they were disappointed with the CARICOM position. And so there's going to be, so I'm looking forward to hearing the arguments on all sides tonight in terms of or the position that some explanation of the position that we have taken with regard, when I say we, the CARICOM region, with regard to the months. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. For those of you tuned in on 91.1, you can't tune off tonight. We have Ambassador David Comissiong, who's going to speak to us about that issue, and we should also have another special guest. But again, Dr. Fergus, great report, and that was something for you. What was the experience of discovering, uncovering that those kinds of things happen in the 21st century?
Well, you're not surprised, but it could be shocking that this is actually happening in the way that is happening, and the implications for us, because it was food for thought, even, for myself, because as you look at the specific situation, you realize it's not really about the continent alone. It's about the African community in general and how it can, disconnect us from ourselves as well and keep us tied, virtually tied, not linked, but tied to the former colonies, dependent on them, and continue feeding their own economy while, we cannot develop our own. So it was troubling in some respects, but it was quite revealing as well. It was insightful even for me, particularly as, I knew about the exchanges we had with Caribbean Airlines during last year's transatlantic forum, when the Santahene was here. I believe David Comissiong was also there, and how Caribbean Airlines was hedging and hedging, and refusing to explain why is it they cannot establish a route to West Africa. And I wondered, is this part of the game really that is going on with Caribbean Airlines that they cannot tell us about?
Yeah. Well, in international relations,
much more time on this segment because we have David here, of course, and we have a schedule to fulfill. So perhaps we can leave some comments. David perhaps would or might want to comment briefly on the report, but let's move on to the next segment of the program.
Indeed. So welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
All right. So, Ambassador, please set the tone for our audience here on the subject of Haiti, where we are right now. And the controversy.
I don't think we're going on to Haiti first,
No?
No, I think it's
wrong here.
Permanent forum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's not jump the gun.
All right. I'm coming back. Go ahead, gentlemen. Today is my first day back.
Permit me to say, though, that I'm looking forward to your piece. Perhaps doing that direct flight between West Africa and the Caribbean. We were in negotiations with Air Peace, and unfortunately, for some very unfortunate reasons, when it looked as if it was going to materialize, those negotiations, those discussions were truncated. But I sense that there's a resolve to restart those negotiations. But Air Peace is very willing. Air Peace is extremely willing to undertake the direct flight between West Africa and the Caribbean. So don't be surprised if, following upon this new venture of a direct flight from Lagos to London, soon from now, you hear word of a direct flight to the Caribbean as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes, very, very good point there, David. Very good point, because Air Peace is still looking forward to coming to the Caribbean. And in fact, they are partnering with Antigua, I believe, to revive Liat. I believe there is some investment in that regard. So they do have a presence in the Caribbean, and that could translate into a very regular direct flight between the Caribbean and West Africa. Whatever the point there would be, landing in, whether it's Barbados or Trinidad, wherever, it would be easier for us, for example, to go to Barbados and to get to Ghana or to get to Lagos, rather than to go to London or go to Miami or go to New York or go to Amsterdam and transit to the continent. Whatever it is, any point in the Caribbean would be much more comfortable for all of us. Yes, so let's talk about the permanent forum. There was the third permanent forum for the United Nations people of African descent. And David Comissiong was there. A number of Caribbean delegates, particularly from the Caribbean Reparations Commission, but from a lot of other organizations, were there. Our own American representative, Akila Jaramogi, was there. Absolutely. So it was a well-attended session. A lot of important issues were addressed, including Haiti, a number of issues. Another decade, for example, was there. So David, tell us about the decade, particularly from your contribution and your point of view.
I don't know if viewers are very familiar with the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, because it is, in all likelihood, perhaps the newest United Nations entity. It was only established about two years ago or so, and it is one of the products, perhaps the most important product of the UN International Decade for People of African Descent, which incidentally, that decade will end at the end of this year. And of course, the decade, the forum, so many other developments come directly out of the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, which was held in Durban, South Africa in 2001. That World Conference is the foundation for all of these subsequent developments. So the forum consists of 10 persons, five of whom are elected by the United Nations General Assembly, and the other five come through the United Nations Human Rights Council. CARICOM has 20% of seats on that forum. In other words, 2 of the 10 members are CARICOM representatives. We were able to get 1 representative through the General Assembly and another representative through the Human Rights Council. And one of our representatives, Dr. June Suma, has just assumed chairmanship of the council. Our other representative is Ms. Gaynell Curry of the Bahamas. So basically, the forum is supposed to be an entity that looks at the interests of people of African descent. And for us, people of African descent are continental Africans, as well as Africans of the diaspora. It is to keep an eye on all of our issues. It is to come up with advice and policy and recommendations, first of all, to the Human Rights Council, but more generally to the entire United Nations system on policies to bring advancement, development, recognition, respect for the human rights of people of African descent. So it's our United Nations entity, which is there to be focused on our interests and our agenda. Thus far, it has had 3 sessions. I attended the 2nd session and this 3rd session. Barbados, the government of Barbados is very keen to support the forum because, you know, we feel that we played a big role in bringing it about. And we know that African and Caribbean governments must be in the vanguard of supporting this forum and showing solidarity with it. A session of the forum is a big event because you have member states representatives, you have representatives of all the relevant United Nations institutions and entities, and then you have civil society. So you have civil society representatives from all across global Africa. So for example, at this 3rd session of the forum, there were over 1,000 civil society representatives in attendance from 85 different countries. And then, of course, the member state representatives, representatives of the various United Nations entities. And for example, at the opening session, was addressed by the Secretary General of UN, Antonio Guterres, but also by the current President of the General Assembly, Ambassador Dennis Francis of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, all of the other big head honchos of United Nations agencies and entities. The theme was the 2nd International Decade for People of African Descent, addressing reparatory justice, sustainable development, and systemic racism. And there were 4 or 5 sub-themes: reparations, sustainable development, and economic justice, education, overcoming systemic racism and historic harm, culture and recognition, and the 2nd International Decade for People of African Descent. In my address, I put 5 things on the table for consideration of the forum. And basically what happens at these sessions is that we all come to the session, we speak to the forum, 10-member forum, we give them our ideas, we put things on the table, and then it is left to the forum to decide from this large multiplicity of ideas and recommendations and proposals what they will extract and what they will embrace, adopt as part of their agenda and their recommendations to the United Nations forward. So out of this session, they will now make a report, having selected the recommendations that they have accepted. They will now make a report both to the Human Rights Council and also to the UN General Assembly in September. So just I'll go to what I put on the table, but I'll also touch upon some of the things that the forum has accepted. I made basically 5 proposals. One, that we need to establish, the forum needs to be in the vanguard of ensuring that we establish a special international tribunal on reparations. That is to recognize that we have no international court now that is really well designed to handle reparations claims, cases of the magnitude and complexity of a claim for reparations for African enslavement. The closest we have is the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, but not only is it deficient in design, but also many of the former enslaver nations entered reservations to the ICJ treaty, forbidding the ICJ from adjudicating cases that go back to their colonial past, to the period before they acceded to the ICJ jurisdiction. So, a special international tribunal on reparations. Secondly, I made the point that we need not just to embrace the United Nations system, because there are so many signs that there are powerful nations that want to destroy the UN and want to destroy this idea of a multinational rules-based system. And I was making the point that we, the countries of people of global Africa, we need to see that this system is potentially valuable to us. So, but not only must we defend it, but we must also reform it. And one of the reforms I proposed had to do with the UN Security Council, that the veto must be removed from those 5 permanent member states, but also that Africa or an African nation must be elevated to the position of being a permanent member state as well. Thirdly, I put on the table the Bridgetown Initiative, that I recommended to the permanent forum that they must give full support to the Bridgetown Initiative and see it as a critical part of our reparatory justice mission, because the Bridgetown Initiative, properly understood, is really has really infused within it the reparations principle, and it is looking at how we restructure international economic and political order, the financial order that was constructed at a time when African and Caribbean nations were still colonies, and therefore it was constructed in a way as to not sufficiently include us, include our concerns, give us a proper seat at the table. So, full support for the Bridgetown Initiative. Fourth, Haiti, that the permanent forum needs to focus on Haiti, needs to make Haiti a priority, needs to call on the international community to give Haiti all of the solidarity and support it needs to get out of the crisis that it's in. And then finally, fifth, I said that that the permanent forum obviously focuses on defending the human rights of African people against their infringement, particularly in white majority societies or at the hands of white nations, but that we must also be concerned. Black lives matter, Black lives only matter, Black lives are precious, but we must also be concerned with how Black lives are treated in African and Black majority countries. And I was referring specifically to some of the conflicts, the long-running conflicts in which that have gone on, in some cases for decades, in some cases for multiple years, in which so many of our people are killed. so many African people lose their lives, which is really sending a message that black life is cheap. And I was making the point that in the Caribbean, we have adopted the notion of our region being a zone of peace. And we have been able to, having adopted that concept of a zone of peace, it directs us towards the need for peace, the need for peaceful settlement of disputes and contentions. And we have been able to use that concept of a zone of peace on several occasions, even in the recent past in the Caribbean, to diffuse tensions and to deal with difficult matters. So I was urging the Permanent Forum to recommend to all African and Black majority nations that they too adopt the notion of their geographical space being a zone of peace, and that would and therefore that they prioritize peace and peaceful settlement of disputes, peacemaking, and peacekeeping. And I'm pleased to
David,
say,
let me ask you a question briefly because we would want some intervention by our other
yeah,
brothers on the panel. In respect of the fact that the president of the United Nations is now a Caribbean person, Dennis Brown, and the head of the UN Permanent Forum is a Caribbean person in the name of Dr. Sumo. How does that impact our optimism for the realization of the ideas that you submitted and the agenda of the Permanent Forum on a whole? And in addition to that, if you can also refer to the CARICOM mission for reparations as an agenda on its own. Yeah.
well, let me say that for the Permanent Forum, probably the biggest item on their agenda is reparations, reparatory justice. In fact, they stress that many times, that sustainable development, development for the 21st century, central to it is reparation. So that's a big part of the Permanent Forum's agenda, and they've made that very clear. I think that the Permanent Forum is going to perhaps be the key institution for driving forward our global African agenda at the United Nations. As you know, we have had this decade for people of African descent since 2015. The truth be told, it has accomplished very little. And it has accomplished very little because it has not had leadership within the UN system. Now, the Permanent Forum is probably the best fruit of that decade, but it only came on stream 2 years before the end of the decade. So it was not around, for a substantial time to provide leadership. Coming on stream 2 years ago, it's now had its third session. It is refining its ideas, its program, and one of the things that it has demanded is a second decade. It is making a demand. In fact, the theme of the third session was the second international decade for people of African descent. And if I'm to judge from the statements made by representatives of member states and representatives of UN entities at the session, I think we are going to get the second decade. And I'm going to predict that we will get the second decade, and that fortunately for us, this time around, we will have an entity that can provide the leadership that was missing in the first decade. And that entity is the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. So yes, Ambassador Francis will only be president of the General Assembly for 1 year. So his term will come to an end in September. So we can't depend on his presence going forward. But suffice to say, I think the Permanent Forum, with two of our CARICOM reps in there representing us, and of course our representatives from all over global Africa, those 10 members, I think they will be in a very strategic position to provide the leadership in this second decade. And I look forward to us doing much better and achieving much more during the second decade.
Okay, so let's leave that there, and perhaps we go on to another big issue with respect to Haiti. Perhaps Shabaka, if you unmute, I will ask you to introduce the segment, since you have some involvement as well in the discussion of the issue of Haiti. So let's move on to Haiti. Let's talk about the Haitian situation, the latest developments.
Yeah,
Yes.
before we start that conversation, let me just congratulate Ambassador Comissiong on the issues that he took to the Permanent Forum. You know, those are really issues at the very center of our concerns in international politics, in the international political economy. So, thank you so much, Ambassador Comissiong, for raising those issues. And of course, I was at the first Permanent Forum, the history-making one. And those of us who've been following this particular institution, we look at what happened with the Permanent Forum for Indigenous Peoples. And they were established in 2000, and they really started to have an impact in the later part of that decade. And I think that's where a lot of the optimism comes from, the fact that we've seen how that particular forum works on behalf of the peoples that it represents. We have an example from the indigenous peoples, and we hope that similar kind of force will be brought to bear from the only one for people of African descent. So we are optimistic. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now let's move on to this next subject. The CARICOM has played a role, or has been part of a prominent part of the discussions to develop a transitional government in Haiti, which has been established, which is quite controversial. There were gunshots on the ground, a lot of unrest on the day that it was inaugurated. And there's been a lot of disquiet across the Pan-African community, a lot of disagreement about this particular step in Haitian democracy. So, Ambassador, you're on the inside, you're seeing it for what it is. You need to help us understand what's happening here, and perhaps give us some guidance in terms of how we should deal with the controversies that are afoot.
Well, thank you, Shabaka. The first point to make is that Haiti is a member of CARICOM. A lot of people who speak about this issue tend to speak as if Haiti is out here and CARICOM is over here. Haiti is a member of CARICOM. Also, some of them don't understand. I see many international news stories describing CARICOM as a trade bloc. CARICOM is much, much more than a trade bloc. It is a community. It is a brotherhood. And Haiti is part of that brotherhood. So the governments and people of CARICOM have a sacred responsibility for the people of Haiti. They are part of us. They're part of the brotherhood. So that's the first thing. Now, we haven't always behaved that way on both sides. Sometimes we seem not to appreciate that, and the Haitians seem not to appreciate that.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
let's make this. Let me engage you right there, because some of the civil society, some members of the Pan-African community feel that we are in some sense betraying our sacred responsibility to Haiti by participating in this traditional council, which they feel is being is the product of forces that have traditionally been at the center of undermining development in Haiti. How would you
let me explain that there is no good or perfect solution to the situation in Haiti. Haiti is in a very, very serious existential crisis. The last time Haiti had an election of any sort was in 2016. There is absolutely no elected official in Haiti now. So there's been a collapse, basically a collapse of the state. There's nobody that really has constitutional legitimacy. The gangs, criminal gangs, have taken advantage of that situation, have asserted themselves, have caused mayhem in Haiti, have killed thousands of people, have raped thousands of women, have displaced probably over 100,000 Haitian people, have burnt people's homes, etc., etc. So, in that situation, CARICOM having responsibility for its member state, remember, in this situation of crisis, the different actors that tend to get involved in Haitian affairs, the US, Canada, OAS, they were all doing their thing, one way or the other. And the question came up, well, what will CARICOM do? Are we simply going to be attached to what the US and Canada and other people are doing? And we said, no, we must have our own independent CARICOM initiative. And we carried out an analysis that said to us that in order for there to be any solution to the crisis in Haiti, it has to start with a political solution. It has to start with creating some kind of national unity transitional administration, because if you don't do that, if the society was so divided, extremely divided, if you are not able to bring together some kind of national unity initiative, nothing else, you will be able to accomplish nothing else. Security, humanitarian, nothing else. So we decided that that is where we were going to focus. And what did we do? Well, we established a group of eminent persons, 3 former CARICOM prime ministers, Prime Minister Kenny Anthony of St. Lucia, Prime Minister Bruce Golding of Jamaica, Prime Minister Perry Christie of the Bahamas. And we said to them, go into Haiti, meet with all the stakeholders, bring everybody together and get them talking to each other and see if out of that process you could establish some kind of national unity framework. And that's exactly what they did. They went into Haiti, they met with the stakeholders. At certain points, they brought Haitian stakeholders to Jamaica, where they met with them. And as the process went along, they were speaking to everybody. They were speaking to the Montana Accord Group, which is a very large civil society coalition that has within it women's organizations.
Yeah, we had a couple of them on this show a little earlier on in the maybe in the last 2 months, perhaps.
Yeah. So the point is, they were talking to everybody. Of course, the traditional establishment political parties. What happened in Haiti was that several political coalitions were formed because everybody was supposedly searching for a solution. So, the Montana Accord, they came together, but also the people supporting Ariel Henry, the prime minister, they came together as well in the December 21st Accord. You had the January 30 Collective. You had the former Prime Minister Claude Joseph, he formed his own party. So you had all of these different formations coming together and everybody purporting to propose a solution. So the genius of CARICOM was that we brought everybody together and we said, let us discuss it.
Ambassador, let me just ask one question before you continue. Sorry to interrupt, but one of the places I visited in the last year was Colombia, and there the President Petro has something he describes as perfect peace, where he is attempting to engage in the same language that you're using there, all the parties. And those parties include groups that, would have been considered criminal elements in the past. He's engaging all the elements of the Colombian space to try to bring everybody together, all the elements who have established some space somewhere in the Colombian discourse. He tries to meet with them regardless of their past. I noticed that you described the gangs in total as criminal elements, and there is a discourse emerging on the left in civil society that some of these gangs, or perhaps one or two of these gangs, may not necessarily be straightforward criminal entities, and perhaps they should also be involved in discourse in the same spirit and in the same mode as what Petro is doing in Colombia.
Most of the CARICOM government said that the group of eminent persons had the freedom to speak to anybody who could play a part in the process. They had liberty. There was only one CARICOM government that objected to them having any engagement with the gangs. So that was the position. You had a majority saying, speak to whoever you need to speak to. One CARICOM government sticking out, no, you should have no engagement with the gangs. So that was the dynamic. As the discussions went along, I think CARICOM started the discussions with the idea that the acting Prime Minister Ariel Henry, that he would be a part of the national unity structure that they were trying to craft. But I think as the discussions went along, it became clear that his presence was proving problematical, that many of the other elements, more let's say patriotic elements, didn't want anything to do with him or his administration. So ultimately, the solution that emerged was that he would resign, he would make way, he would not be part of the new National Unity Administration, which would take the form of a 9-member presidential transitional council. And when I say 9-member, these are 9 sectors, 9 coalitions. So you have the Lavalas movement, family Lavalas of former President Aristide. You have the Montana Accord people. You have the private sector. You have the interfaith community. You have the civil society. But you also then have the 4 more establishment political entities. That is the December 21st Accord, which was supported by Henri, the January 30 Collective, the Petit Desalines Party, which is led by this politician, Moïse Jean-Charles, and the EDE-RED formation led by Claude Joseph. So those are the 9. 7 of them are voting members. 2 of them don't have votes. That is the interfaith and the civil society. They don't have votes. And the whole idea is that this council would assume the powers of the presidency, that they would then, having assumed the powers of the presidency, they would select a prime minister, a council of ministers, a national electoral council, and a national security council as a transition arrangement, only for a 2-year period, take control of the situation, stabilize it, and work towards elections in the latter half of next year, when the Haitian people would have the opportunity to elect who they really wish to run their country. Now, this business about the gangs, whether the gangs should be involved in that transition process. Basically, the Haitian organizations have said, no, we don't want them involved. We don't intend to legitimize them. We don't intend to legitimize them because we know that is long-term tragedy for our country. So this is not a decision for the group of eminent persons of CARICOM to make. This is a decision for the Haitian stakeholders themselves to make. So CARICOM didn't have a problem, but most of CARICOM did not have a problem with the group of eminent persons talking to gang leaders, but being part now of the transitional arrangement, that's a different matter altogether. And that is a shot that the Haitian stakeholders, they have to call that shot. CARICOM can't call that shot for them. But they're very clear. And you talk about some of these gangs not really being criminal, but the truth is that some of them in recent times maybe recognizing where this whole thing is moving are trying to recast themselves as some kind of revolutionary forces that should be allocated a space in the political process. But a lot of Haitians are not buying that because they have suffered from the depredations of these organizations, and they continue to I mean, these are organizations that have attacked. They've closed down schools. They've attacked government facilities. They have even attacked the National Library, destroying some of Haiti's precious literature going back to the 19th century. They've attacked the airport. They've attacked the fuel terminal. I mean, these are organizations that have done real damage to the Haitian people. So
Okay,
anyhow,
David, I want to come in here because we have instructions to close at the top of the hour. Also, your request that you can't go beyond 9 o'clock. So, Shabaka, no overtime tonight. No,
I
I
have a
want you
general
to just briefly
comment.
comment. I want you to briefly comment on the external policing factor because that seems to be imminent as well. What is your view on that briefly? And then you can wrap up with whatever point you wanted to cover. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the previous Ariel Henry administration, as you know, would have made a request to the United Nations Security Council for a UN Security Council resolution approving some kind of international, multinational security intervention in Haiti to assist the Haitian National Police. The truth is, the Haitian National Police is fighting a very difficult battle. I think when this crisis first started, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the Haitian National Police was something like 14,000 police officers. Now it is down to somewhere between 8 to 9,000 police officers. So they got the United Nations Security Council resolution, and Kenya has stepped forward and has pledged 1,000 of their personnel, mainly police personnel, to come in and help the Haitian National Police. So far as CARICOM is concerned, I think the settled opinion across CARICOM is that yes, the Haitian National Police do need the assistance. They do need personnel to come in and help them to bolster their numbers and help them to be able to deal with this gang situation. So I think that CARICOM, when they had the negotiations about putting together this presidential council, I think the CARICOM negotiators would have urged that upon the Haitian stakeholders that that they accept the UN Security Council um, process of this multinational security support mission. But suffice to say, it really will be up to the new presidential council because now that they have been installed, they become government of Haiti. And it will be for them. For example, the Kenyans said once Ariel Henry was off the scene, the Kenyan position was, but the person that we had made the arrangement with, the government that we had made the arrangement with, is no longer in office. So we will not move forward until there's an administration in place that can deal with us. So I think it will very much be in the lap of the new presidential transitional council to determine what security support they need whether they need personnel coming in, whether they see it being handled some other way. So we wait to hear. But the latest development, and a very troubling development that occurred yesterday, that we need to focus on, is that there seems to be a split within the presidential council. Yesterday, they were supposed to elect, the 9 members of the council were supposed to elect which one of them would be, in a sense, the chair of the council, the leader of the council. I think they're even using the term president of the council. Not that
Okay,
he would.
let's take a pin, David. We have to thank our 91.1 listeners for tuning in with us this evening as we bid them good night, because it's the top of the hour for them as they go on to another program. So good night and see you again next week. Yes, continue, David.
Yeah,
Wrapping up.
I think it's important to put this on the table, because this is something very troubling that emerged just yesterday. So they were supposed to select who would be the leader of the council, which one of them. And apparently, four of the members of the council came together, 4 of the voting members, and these are basically the ones that represent the more establishment political forces. They came together and they basically imposed their selection on the council. But they went even further, not just to select the leader of the council, but they also virtually simultaneously selected the prime minister. And it seems as though it is being reported that they have indicated that that they have come to some kind of pact between the 4 of them, to act as a bloc within the council. Now, this is troubling, because it means that there are 7 voting members. If the 4 of them come together in a pact, it means that they will dominate. They will dominate the council. So this obviously is going to cause something of a crisis for the council, and we have to wait and see how it will be mediated and how it will be worked out. Because for this process to work, this process that CARICOM has husbanded and shepherded, for this to work, it really requires unity. It requires unity. This is supposed to be a national unity. This is not a constitution. This is not where anybody voted for these folk, but this was something cobbled together in very difficult circumstances, where there is no constitutional structure, where the state has virtually collapsed. So this was an effort to bring together all of the forces that suggested or were recognized as leading actors, contending for leadership within Haiti, to bring them all together just for a 2-year transitional period, so that we can get to a free and fair election. But it will require unity, and it will require a lot of support and solidarity, not only from CARICOM, but all across the international community. So what happened yesterday is, in a sense, very troubling, and I hope that it will be resolved satisfactorily.
Yes.
But any questions from you? I have until 9:30. I have to do another program at 9:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, David, I think you have just raised the questions there, and the troubling issues. And of course, as I said, across the Caribbean civil society, the global civil society right now, those who, traditionally stand in solidarity with Haiti, there is among them groups of people who feel strongly that it was amiss on the part of those who organize the Transitional Council not to engage the gangs as well in the style of what happened in Puerto Rico. You know, to bring everybody together really means bringing everybody together at the table, and there's the feeling, of course, that the traditional powers that have manipulated politics in Haiti for the last 100 years are still, in this new dispensation. They still continue to have their way, and that, of course, is a sense of, and of course, the developments that you have just pointed to suggest perhaps that those forces in Haiti that have the comprador class is seeking to try to impose itself on the proceedings in a way that could really undermine the noble efforts of CARICOM. But let me just say this to those who are listening, because there are going to be people who are going to tune into this program not just tonight, but tomorrow, next week, and look at it on the internet. David Comissiong, Ambassador Comissiong, is one of the most respected voices in our community. That's why we have him on the show tonight to discuss this issue. His contribution goes back before the World Conference Against Racism in Durban in 2001, which was so instrumental. We don't have time to discuss just how important the developments that took place are, but of course, we highlighted one of them tonight, the formation of the Permanent Forum. And so, David, we are really happy to have you here, and we're happy to know that you, of all people, are involved in trying to advance issues around the question of Haiti. So we do come, and I think it's important for our listeners to understand that we do have a certain deference and respect for your contribution, and so those who may disagree must understand that they must disagree respectfully.
You see, a lot of people disagree, but when you press them and ask them what is the solution, they have no solution. And we need to go back to where it began. There's no perfect solution. It's very difficult. You're basically trying to get Haiti to some level of safety and get the Haitian people to some level of safety. It is not a perfect solution. It's a very imperfect solution, but there are no perfect solutions. That is the problem. And yes, we know that these major powers, United States, Canada, the OAS, etc., have always had their own agendas in relation to Haiti. But I believe that one of the things that can help to, in a sense, keep them at bay is the presence of CARICOM. That if CARICOM is there, if CARICOM remains, because there was a time when there was no reference to CARICOM. It was all about the US, Canada, the OAS.
But Ambassador, Your Excellency, is that not partly CARICOM's fault? We did not really press the issue of Haiti, and I'm just just for the benefit of our listeners, after the earthquake in 2011, it's 2010, was it the earthquake, that major earthquake in Haiti, when the whole world opened their arms to Haitians and invited them in, and Senegal said, if you come to Senegal, the President Wade said, come, we will give you land, etc., etc. One single migrant from Haiti showed up. One refugee, I won't use the word migrant, refugee came to the airport in Piaco in Trinidad and Tobago. And we tried to turn that one young lady away. One showed up. So there's an attitude, and Trinidad is not by itself, a very negative attitude towards Haiti.
Let me say that there's a lot of blame to go around, because it stems from the Haitian side as well. I became ambassador to CARICOM in 2018. When this crisis began to manifest, let's say early 2019, for a long time, the CARICOM leaders were imploring President Moise, we see that something has gone wrong in Haiti. We want to come to Haiti. We want to visit. We want to try to find out for ourselves what the situation is, to see how CARICOM can help. Can we come? There was no interest in the Haitian government as it was then was interested in the United States, Canada, and the OAS. In fact, CARICOM say to them, but You are a member of CARICOM, and here you have teams going into Haiti from the OAS and from these people, and you would not invite us, you would not permit us to come. So so there's a lot of blame to go around.
Yeah, I would say that is by design, but but I don't say, but I understand
Let
I
me make
understand the point from the governmental point of view.
Let me make the point. So yes, I suspect that Haiti became a member of CARICOM in 2002. I suspect that not a lot of thought went into Haiti's membership and what it would mean and the responsibilities it would bring with it. And I suspect that CARICOM really did not know how to contend with this member state of 11 million people with such tremendous problems. I mean, the overall population of CARICOM is 18 million. Haiti is 11 of those 18 million. CARICOM nations are small nations, with limited resources and power. So I suspect that for some time, CARICOM is intimidated by what it would mean to really take responsibility for Haiti. But I have, and when I began in 2018, I saw that. That's what I saw. But I can tell you that over the years, I have seen an evolution in that attitude within CARICOM. And
Yeah,
what,
Ambassador, you have been part of that evolution, and maybe we need to. I know you're a humble man, and you're not going to come here and talk about that. But those of us who know, we want to celebrate that fact.
Of course. I mean, I've been working on the Haiti issue from the time I became ambassador to CARICOM. But I really want to give viewers some insight. Look, the amount of time and effort and energy, not just a group of eminent persons, but the CARICOM leaders spent with the Haitian stakeholders over the last, let's say, 6 weeks. And I'm talking about people like President Mohamed Irfan Ali, because he was the chair of CARICOM. He is the chair of CARICOM currently. Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez, who has a long-standing record on Haiti. Prime Minister Motley, Prime Minister Davis of the Bahamas. Prime Minister Mitchell Skerritt. The Jamaicans also came to the table. Their Minister of Foreign Affairs, their Prime Minister, and they really made a big effort to be involved with this process, spent a lot of hours, a lot of nights, a lot of days. And it says to me that we have made a psychological, being CARICOM, have made a psychological breakthrough in finally saying, look, the Haitian problem is our problem. We can't say, let the Americans deal with it, let the Canadians, let the OAS, let the UN. No, we have to be in there. And I think that is the key. It is not going to be easy. And we know these big powers have their own agendas, and their agenda often is to put their man in power. And our agenda is that the Haitian people must be given the opportunity, just like the rest of us, to elect who they truly wish to run their country, because that is the only way you're going to have stability. You're going to have a government that the people accept. People are not going to be out on the streets constantly protesting, etc., and there will be a government that is accountable to the people. So that's the only. CARICOM has no other interest, no imperialist interest. No, CARICOM's only interest is in the welfare of the people of Haiti. And yes, you may sometimes get things wrong, but the citizens of our region should be comforted in the knowledge that we have no imperialist interest in relation to Haiti. This idea that CARICOM leaders are just somebody's lackeys and stooges who they can order around, that is not correct. That is not.
Well, I think that the critique is a little more nuanced than that, David. And it sounds more like there's that saying, good intentions pave the way to hell. The idea is that even with all the good intentions of CARICOM, if they haven't developed a sophisticated understanding of the Haitian problem, they could end up doing things that could actually, in all their good intentions, undermine the move towards a truly participatory democracy in Haiti.
We shall see. But CARICOM's intervention has been to bring the Haitian stakeholders together, to encourage them to make compromises, to be able to come together. So I think yes, CARICOM would have urged them, for example, to accept the multinational security mission because CARICOM firmly believes that this is a sensible thing, that this is something they need, so they would have urged them. But fundamentally, it would have been up to the Haitians, and it is still up to them now to make the ultimate decisions. CARICOM's real um, intervention was just to bring them together and to urge them to work together in the interests of their country and their people. And we will see
Yeah, man.
it's fraught with danger, but what we know is that we have to stay the course with our member state. We cannot abandon them. We have to be there. We have to have their back. And we have to make sure, to the best of our ability, that nobody takes advantage of them and that nobody imposes any ulterior destructive agenda on them. So that is our responsibility, and we have to do it to the best of our ability. And I trust that the citizens of the Caribbean would recognize that. There are people, there are all kinds of commentators making all kinds of statements, but they do so from afar. A lot of them are disconnected. CARICOM leaders are concerned about the lives and the well-being of those 11 million Haitian people.
Yes, indeed, of course. I wouldn't doubt that for a second, Ambassador Comissiong. And of course, we're going to continue to monitor developments in Haiti here on Indaba as frequently as we can as the situation evolves on the ground. So we want to really thank you for coming to join us tonight and for taking the time to give us that feedback. And of course, also to share with us the latest news from the last meeting of the Permanent Forum, which we, or all people of Africa and the diaspora, have to continue to monitor and to pay close attention to. So thank you very much, Ambassador. Is there anything you want to leave our people with?
Well, we this is a very important time for us. We are mature people. Our Caribbean nations, we are now celebrating some 60 years and more of independence. Um, and we must act. We must act like mature people and mature nations. And what I would like to implore all of our people is that in exhibiting that maturity, if we have if our leaders do something that we are unsure about, we are unclear about, we have concerns about, engage. Let
Yes.
us engage. Let us talk to each other. In fact, one of the things I'm going to recommend to CARICOM is that our CARICOM Bureau, which is made up of three prime ministers plus the Secretary General, in between conferences, that they hold regular scheduled press conferences so that our regional media, our international media, would have an opportunity to question them, to get clarity on any issues that need clarification. But what we must not do, we must not, we can't, as a mature people, as mature nations, have this attitude of keeping our distance and simply throwing attacks and insults at our leaders and our governments when we could ask for engagement. We could engage and
Yes.
and talk things through and get information to clarify and to hold accountable as well.
Yes,
So
so David, I think that is the guidance that I was looking for at the start of the program. I think we're going to echo that here in civil society. and we're going to see how we can advance that process of engagement. I think that is a great place for us to leave it there tonight. And once again, to thank you for joining us here on another edition of Indaba. Yours
I,
truly, listeners,
I head on to
David
I head
Comissiong.
to Jamaica now.
Okay.
All right.
Take care, Ambassador. Yes, colleagues. So we heard it there from the ambassador on two subjects. Unfortunately, we had another guest who was supposed to be with us from Haitian civil society. It was my understanding that they couldn't make it. They've explained why, but of course there will be other opportunities because Indaba will continue to follow this issue, the development in Haiti, very closely. So any comments, Ambassador, Reverend Kamau, Dr. Fergus?
I would give way to Kwame to make final comments and to close the program in his usual style, recognizing some of our people online.
Sure, thank you so very much. And you certainly did not miss the mark. You've been away for a little while, but you came back in fine form. Perhaps you should take some time off more often. Certainly a very, very superlative interview there. It's one of those evenings where I didn't have much work to do at all. You asked all the right questions, and of course, you engaged the kind of due deference that is owed to someone that is a stalwart of Pan Africanism. And this entire reparations movement, a diplomat par excellence, the likes of Ambassador David Comissiong. By way, of course, of our listening audience, we want to thank you on tonight for your presence. We want to salute Deborah E. Walters out of New York, one of our Queen sisters there, hailing our Indaba family. We want to recognize as well out of Burkina Faso a Yoruba princess in the person of Anik Aina, a princess, her Royal Highness. We want to recognize the Kingdom of Judah in America as well, giving greetings. He actually gave a comment with regards to the permanent forum and the whole issue of the decade. And he was saying that while we are looking forward to a second decade, there's certainly a need for us to end the first one right, on a high note, on a good note, a strong closing of the first one so that we can use that momentum to go into the second one. We also recognize as well a Haitian activist and someone who's certainly sympathetic to the Haitian cause by the name of Maati. If this is indeed the Queen Mother that I think she is, certainly a spiritualist par excellence, and she spoke to the issue that with regards to Haiti, the one woman on the 9-member transitional council, if you will, does not have voting rights. I want to make the point that civil society and by extension the religious community, I think it was a faux pas to not give them voting rights, to have them there simply as observer status. I think it was a genuine mistake. And I think had they been given voting rights, we would not find ourselves in a situation where we have a nominal 9-member council, but you have only 7 with voting rights, and you have a minority of the council in 4 eminent groups dominating as they are. Of course, with the issue of other local persons, Aina, Ola Iola Kede, and others, we see you, we salute you, we recognize you. Princess Aina making the point that she wants to thank Ambassador David Comissiong for his insights, very helpful from an African perspective. We remain engaged on the liberation process of all African people. So again, Sister Maati is making the point more women should be present. But as we close on tonight, as per the usual, we are not out of love, certainly not out of faith, absolutely not out of words. But for now, we are out of time. We want to thank our technical staff in Renee, Francois. We certainly would like to thank our Queen Mother, our producer, Queen Mother Zakia Uzuma Wadada, And we certainly would like to encourage you before we leave on tonight. You love what you heard here, smash that like button. If there's a love button, show some love by way of the love button. Please be sure to leave a comment in terms of where you are and how you really enjoyed tonight's program. And absolutely do share it on your socials, whether Facebook, whether by way of YouTube or by way of the other socials. I don't tend to have many of the others, but please share it far and wide. We want to grow this Indaba army, this Indaba community. Again, with all having been said, all we can do now is close and say a very pleasant good night, a very pleasant grand rising, depending on what time you are, from our co-host to you. Again, love and light, and see you next Wednesday for another edition of Indaba, the voice of the people, the voice of the Emancipation Support Committee, the place to find consensus, a very key word. But for now, over and out, a very pleasant good night. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night.